Welcome to part 1 of 3 of our Black History Month program for 2021. Today, we will hear from Maury Friedsleben, principal of North High School, Stillwater officer Antonio Espinosa, selected incarcerated population poetry and art, and musical group The Berry Family, and so much more. Thank you all for your participation, and please enjoy.
Hello, everyone. I have the honor of welcoming you to Black History Month in this year, 2021. I have the honor because this is the beginning of what I know is going to be an incredible program. And I first want to say thank you to all of the DOC staff who've been involved in creating this program, which I look forward to seeing in its entirety. I know that there are some incredible speakers that are going to be presenting, and I look forward to hear them present. I wanted to just say that Black History Month is something that oftentimes we attribute with the kind of icons of Black history, the Harriet Tubmans, the Rosa Parks, the Martin Luther Kings, the Tuskegee Airmen. These are all kind of really elemental and core kind of people that we oftentimes can think about during Black History Month. But I think for many of us, I would just challenge us to think about the ways in which our experiences with Black people have influenced us in really profound and positive ways. And I want to just highlight two people that have been greatly influential to me. These African-American people changed me. And I am forever grateful to them for that, because not only did I learn a little bit about Black history from and through them, but I actually learned a little bit about myself. First was a college instructor, a African-American woman teacher who, for some reason, I connected with in really incredible ways. That I found her to be moving in her presentation in ways that it helped me to understand the experience of Black people in this country that, frankly, I was never exposed to as I grew up. And it was because of the ways in which she helped me understand the experience of Black people in our country and their importance and contributions to our country and where we are, that ultimately I got a better inkling and insight into myself. I also learned from her the ways in which I benefited. Because being a white man and the history of slavery in our country and systemic racism that have benefited me and cost and hurt people of color in ways that in many cases I may have contributed to intentionally or unintentionally. And I think it is through these experiences, the way that these folks influence us, that we also can honor Black history. The second person is a person I would just speak to by name. His name is Bill Finney. He was the former chief of police in the city of St. Paul. And I had the honor of working for him. And over the course of time, ultimately found him to be an incredible mentor. And he too helped me understand some things about the nature of public service. He helped me understand the experience of Black people in our world, especially as it related to government systems and government systems who had power and control. And frankly, it is because of him that I'm in the position I am today, in my belief, because he ultimately gave me insight into myself and into the world around me. The things that are good and the things that need work. And we all know there's many things that need work. And so as we think about Black history, I would encourage us to certainly lift up and honor and recognize the iconic names and figures who have greatly influenced the history and trajectory of our country. And then think about some of the people that we may have experienced more closely, more interpersonally, um, like the Bill Finneys that you in your life, or it could even be more modern day people who I think will go down as incredible influencers of Black history, the Stacey Abrams of the world, and um, the shifts that we start to see going forward. And I think when we honor and recognize a Black history, when we honor and recognize the contributions and the ways in which the differences and similarities that exist between us as people and lift that up, that's when we have a better world. And so I want to, first of all, just welcome you again to Black History Month, speak to it's important, ask and challenge all of us to learn a little bit more, to connect across our racial differences, and do as much as we can to first honor and recognize the contributions of Black Americans in our country, and do all we can to build a stronger divide that exists. And we do that by recognizing the importance of the differences and Black history in our country. So thank you all. We have much work to do, and we do that best when we do it together. Take care of yourselves and take care of each other. Thank you.
Spirit of abundance, God of grace, Mother of hope. We pause now to remember those stories that are all around us, but so often passed over. Those stories that, when told, are shared because of what someone is, not who they are. This month in our nation's character is Black History Month. Help us, O Lord, to realize that Black history is all of our history. May the day come when these stories are so wildly taught that no month needs to be separately divided. We know this day will not come until we as a people make different choices. We pray now for those new choices. May we come to see a day when the prison system becomes redemptive, not punitive. A day where the legal system learns to focus more squarely on the facts rather than the color of our skin. A day when our schools are as well funded as our needs demand. May our role models be allowed to excel when they thrive and not be taken down for their rich heritage. We know this will require a shift in power, and this can be scary for some. Give us those days filled with hope, not with fear. May we come to know grace so that our hearts will not be hardened to the pain that surrounds us. There are so many beautiful stories that need to be told and need to be heard, and we need to get the chance to hear them. Oh God, widen our vision so that the history of this shared month and every month can be an opportunity for us to be acquainted with your grace. Come to be known as our history as well. We are most human when we see the humanity in others. Oh God, in your many names, we pray for the transformation of our hearts, our minds, and our culture. For we know and trust that you are and always will be one God forever and ever. Amen.
Good morning and welcome to the Black History Month production. My name is Andrea Long and I'm currently a caseworker here at the Minnesota Department of Corrections Stillwater location. And today we have 4 individuals that we will be interviewing for Black History Month. The first individual is Jeffrey Young, and I will turn it over to him.
All right, hello everybody. My name is Jeff Young, and this poem that I'm reading is titled Painting the World of the Color of Heritage. What if truth can be crafted out of bad angles rooted in heartbeats? Born in the soil of soul, like the truth, I don't gotta dance. Even if you over-rotate slightly, like the river, we are music. Someone says that is only a poem, but blind folk heard it wrong. I wish I knew how love could pluck the gray grit. I'd free all black diamonds and pearls. Their minds captured in rusting chains, they dance along crooked teeth, hope to stumble upon how it would feel to be free. Hateful men love the sound of grinding teeth. American traditions teach us you can get to heaven by dance. One time, not yours or my time, depending on who you ask. I'm still undecided. We danced like that and sang every note loud, especially the wrong ones, and no one called us home. Dancers danced that glorious suicide. Torn between 2 worlds, we danced away from Africa. That hour was dark. Everywhere, all darkness. As a result, botched dreams intrude upon facts, and we believed all of them. What remains of our origins? No matter what, a poet makes use of dissonance. No matter what, even when we break, we spit kaleidoscopes, the promised light. Detonation begins in the slim inch between the dancer's body and the spiritual unknown. Paint a picture outside the line. Spirit hopped out something compelling. Spoke only of Georgia clay red, saffron yellow, endless black, and sachet green, making a paradise. A place to raise kids in. God had been listening all this time, like he had planned the feat all along. I think he is laughing at the hateful, blind and deaf to an African firefly. But they saw us glowing anyhow. Some might call it the Holy Spirit, the God self. Revolutionaries, gather round. Raise your fists and practice risk. We don't gotta dance to be free. We be eternal music, making a world somewhere in America boogie to our rebels beat. Thank you.
So the question we have for Mr. Young today is, what does Black History Month mean to you?
So the need for Black History Month, or this designated time, it's disheartening to me that there is a need. And that's kind of obvious if you ever watch Jeopardy. Whenever I watch it and a question that comes up that concerns what is considered Black history, the contestants seem always to be stumped. So I look forward to when this history of America is so fluent in academia that it's, as American as apple pie. But I don't say that to say that we need to be waiting for acceptance or waiting for the acceptance of African American culture's contribution into American history or asking for inclusion. People like the woman responsible for the 1619 Project, Henry Louis Gates and many others, they're exercising their own power to make that so. And on that power, I heard a quick quote just recently from Charles Blow, who wrote a book called The Devil You Know, and he's a New York Times columnist. And he said, Black equality cannot be dependent on white transformation. It has something that has to be dependent on Black power. And part of Black equality is proper acknowledgement of how our culture forced America to be a great work in progress. So I look forward to when people in their own ways and their talents, they make the space and they push back on the Eurocentral narrative of what makes USA a great work in progress, and this becomes something that's mainstream in America, and no longer a need for just a month to put emphasis on it. It's always there.
Thank you, Mr. Young.
So good evening. Tonight I have the distinct pleasure to be joined by a number of our leaders in the community who have made it their mission and their point to give a voice to those who are often the voiceless. And so I'm welcome to be joined by them as to take part and participate in our efforts here at the Minnesota Department of Corrections to really pay homage to Black excellence throughout the years. I'm Curtis Shanklin, Deputy Commissioner here at the Department of Corrections, where I oversee our reintegration and restorative services division. And so not to waste anybody's time, because again, I'm excited to hear from all of you, your perspectives. And so we'll go around and do quick introductions. And then with that, we'll jump into the questions. So Leslie, we can start with you, and then we'll just go around, just whatever introduction you want to give to the crowd who will be watching. So I appreciate it.
Grace and peace, brothers and sisters. Again, my name is Leslie E. Redmond. Always want to start by saying happy Black History Month, recognizing that this is not just history, but it's history in the making. Each and every one of us, whether we are out here on this plantation or you all are inside plantations that are now called prisons, I am humbled to be here with you all today. Many of you remember me as the president for the Minneapolis NAACP. I'm now transitioned out of that role. I'm the founder and CEO of Don't Complain, Activate, and I'm so excited to talk to you all tonight.
Absolutely. Appreciate you having. Anika, you're up.
Thank you so much. Well, my name is Anika Bowie, and I'm born and raised in St. Paul, Minnesota. I have the honor to serve a second term as a vice president for the Minneapolis NAACP. And also, before I even go further, happy Black History Month, happy Black History Year, happy Black History Eternity, Infinity, and beyond, y'all. Blackness is just like infinite. So I just want to put that out there. It's good to be in good company, right? And I hold a lot of different hats. Last time I was inside of Stillwater and Shakopee, I was running for St. Paul City Council. I'm proud to call myself the daughter of Rondo. I'm also the founder and director of a platform called Run Like Harriet, where we are about abolition. We are also about making sure that we are utilizing political education as an avenue to navigate mass incarceration, right, in the criminal injustice system that we have today. So that's just a little segue of what we're gonna be getting, right? Tea is gonna be brewing. We're gonna be talking facts, real, and just hopefully we can leave you with some hope. We can leave you with some thickness, right, to bring back as you navigate this world.
I appreciate that. Good to see you. Kevin, you're up.
I'm Kevin Reese. If you know, you know. Until we are all free, I'm the founder and director and lead consultant of Until We Are All Free. I want to honor all of y'all, and y'all existence is Black history, right? Y'all are existing at the same time with us right now in this moment, and we are striving for this thing that we call justice. So the fact that we have a moment to sit here and pause, and those who know me, and if you don't know me, it's a possibility that I slept in your cell in this state, in that facility where you at right now. It's a moment to celebrate all of our existence and to have an opportunity to decide what we're going to build for the future. So I'm excited to be here.
I'm excited you're here. I appreciate it. Mr. Terrell, last but not least.
Thank you, Curtis. Thanks for having me. Peace and blessings, everybody. My name is Justin Terrell. I'm the executive director of the Minnesota Justice Research Center. We're a nonprofit focused on transforming our justice system, and we focus on research data, research policy, and education. I'm humbled to be here with you all. Really, the way I love these conversations to be is where we flip it, where the camera is on y'all, and we get to listen to the wisdom and knowledge that you guys have. And I'm blessed to have done some work with the folks on this call. I think that everyone's got great things to say. Kevin, I just want to shout you out because you were the first brother to bring me into the prisons for Black History Month. And I promise not to sing during this presentation. But
got footage.
Unfortunately. But I just want to say thank you to all of you for joining this conversation. And I want to say that hopefully whatever we talk about is meaningful and encourage you to get through the next stage of your battle. And so I'm just humbled to be with you. Thank you.
Absolutely. Well, and I just want to again just reiterate, my sincere appreciation, just on behalf, of myself and of the department, to be able to have an opportunity to hear you all's voice. And so for me, this is more about you all's voice. And so with that, I'm gonna stop talking other than asking the questions. And so we'll throw some questions out, and we'll go around to each one, make sure everyone have an opportunity to contribute to that, but also want to be mindful of people's time. So and so we'll make sure we kind of run through them so we can get through all the questions. So let's start with Anika. When you hear Black History Month, what do you think of?
Well, I have to pay homage to Carter G. Woodson, who is the founder of Black History Month. It first originated as the Negro Week, to recognize the contributions that Black folks, Negroes at that time, have contributed to this country. And when I think about it, like, I just have to bask in like infinite joy and also admiration for just only a percentage. I probably only know like maybe 1% of all of the Black history that existed in the contributions in this nation, right? So I just think about so many people, from our academics, from our thought leaders, our inventors, our scientists, every single fabric, right? And I also like to think in like big ways, right? When I hear about Black history, because usually we think about Black history in a marginalized way of what we call, the white man's narrative of us being slaves, right? And slavery definitely is part of our history, but slavery was a disruption, right, of our future. Slavery was a disruption of what we could have been. Also, as part of slavery was removing the real narrative that we were America's labor force, like to a degree, right? And not in a way of minimalizing our work, but we literally were the thought leaders, we were the inventors, we were computers, right? We were every single aspect of you can think of every fabric of innovation to this country. So when I think about Black history, I think about it in such a way of what we were, and where we're at now, and what we could become, right? And to make sure that also we are holding accountable to the disruption of that history, which is white supremacy, which is racism, and which is hatred, right? By all means of definition. And that, like, moving forward and allowing Black life to advance, allowing Black thought to advance, allowing Black excellence to advance, allowing just Black joy to advance, has the opportunity to advance this country in ways that we haven't seen, right? So I see Black history as literally the fabric, the blueprint of why, some folks like to say, what makes America great? Black people make America great, right? That's the best kept secret. And it's time we start spreading it.
Absolutely. I appreciate that. Well, if I could turn to my other sister on this call, Leslie, same question to you. When you hear the phrase or the term Black History Month, for you, what does that mean and what does that represent?
Anika echoes so many of my sentiments. When I think about Black history, I think about American history, because I think we have to stop separating it and acting as if we are not still living on the land that our ancestors have been enslaved on, and we are still enslaved on to this day. When I think about Black history, I think about Malcolm X, I think about Ida B. Wells, I think about Sojourner Truth, I think about George Washington Carver, I think about Kevin Reese, I think about Mayan Burrell, I think about Anika Bowie, I think about Justin Terrell, I think about Deputy Shanklin, and the list goes on and on and on and on, because Black history is now. Black history is still in the making. I think about each and every one of you brothers and sisters that's listening to this. No matter where they place us, no matter how much they bury us, we will rise, we will thrive, because that is our destiny. And so there's nothing that they can do. There's no shackles that they can put on us to remove our crowns that are not only on our heads, but in our hearts. And so I think about the pyramids that we built, the mathematics that we built, the scientific discoveries. I think about our greatness, our riches, and I think about us getting back to that.
Absolutely. I appreciate that. I salute you, both of my sisters. I salute y'all. So for the sake of not making Justin or Kevin have to follow any of that, let me toss this one out to y'all. So Justin, um, when you think back over history, both past and present, for you, who has probably been the most inspirational Black leader for you when you think about it?
Yeah, I appreciate that question. So like myself, like a lot of young Black men, reading the autobiography of Malcolm X was somewhat of a rites of passage for me. Now, I read it when I was 10 years old after sitting in front of uh, TPT watching Eyes on the Prize and with my VHS recorder recording every single episode and indoctrinating myself with because, and here's what's important is because for me, so I watched Eyes on the Prize, and then one day the Ballad of the Bullet came on and it was over, right? Like I was like,
Uh-huh.
this, the thing about Malcolm that I loved is that was his smile and how much he loved Black people and how much he loved being Black. And I grew up in the 90s in South Minneapolis, and there wasn't a whole lot of messages that taught me about loving being Black. And so Malcolm was that encouragement for me. He literally taught me how to love myself. And I think about that being appropriate for this conversation because how many brothers and sisters sit and listening to this conversation were introduced to Malcolm in their cell, right? Yeah, I
Absolutely.
mean, we've had that conversation, and we know that that's a thing that happens when you're locked up. And I think that it's important that we recognize those who inspire us. I'll say one other, just real quick, person that's important to me is my grandmother. And so, Blanche Green grew up in Dime Box, Texas. There was a big Dime Box, Texas, and a little Dime Box, Texas. And Dime Box, Texas was a sharecropping community. And there's actually soil in the National Lynching Museum from that county where my grandmother told me a story about her uncle who had been lynched. And and I just bring that up because my grandmother was somebody who fought for integration in the church in the South, who ultimately had to flee the South from terrorism through the Great Migration. Ended up ultimately here in Minnesota, where my family was grown. And I just think about that relevant to this conversation because the struggle just continues, man. Like it's 2021 and we're still fleeing terrorism. It's 2021 and Black folks are still being lynched. It's 2021 and the same struggles that my grandmother had, the same struggles that Malcolm fought against, we're still dealing with that today. And so I just want to encourage folks on this call, stay resilient. The people listening to this call, stay resilient. We need you. We need your resilience, and we need you to continue to struggle with us, because liberation is possible, but we got to stay at it.
Absolutely. No, I appreciate that. And particularly when you talk about, Malcolm X, because when I think about, him and everything you talked about, I really appreciate you mentioning his smile, but I also think about, the growth, because he was very inspirational, as I think about, my journey. And after he took his journey, over to Mecca and coming back, it didn't change his values and what he felt and what he believed, but the growth of the man to understand that there's a different way to achieve. And at the end of the day, the results is what's matter. And so no, I appreciate you're going and shout out to your grandmother too as well. Mr. Reed, same question. When you think back throughout history, for you, who would you say has been one and not doesn't necessarily be the most inspirational, but wherever you want to go with it, inspirational to you?
I would say Tupac, man. Tupac, the first person that I learned that I was Black. Marvin Gaye used to sing to me. He got me feeling like black was the thing to be. Suddenly the ghetto didn't seem so tough. Even though we had it rough, we always had enough. Right? I was 10, right, listening to that. Tupac was the first thing. It was something about Tupac music that touched a part of my spirit that had never been touched before. Right? He was talking to the artist in me when we're talking about Black history. I was a 10-year-old kid. I didn't understand that as I grow and develop that I would be an artist. But Tupac was able to speak a language to me that my teachers couldn't. Right. So it was before like anyone else was saying, "No, you're Black, you're beautiful, you're valuable." I was already mad because I'm like, Tupac already told me that, right?
Uh-huh.
My whole life. So for me, And it's almost back to your first question. I also want to, when I think about Black history, I think about the salt of the earth, like the people that is here now. You know, we are new people. You know, our ancestors that was brought here as slaves, and our history of being here, we have emerged as a new people. And that new people is the salt of the earth. We influence everything hip. We influence everything cool. We influence popular culture, right? So when I think about Tupac, I think about how much he was a part of that generation and how much like his work and his voice was able to go all around the world. And through that, those same people, we literally impact the whole entire world. And I find great pride in that. Like I find great pride in, because I feel disconnected from my history from Africa. I feel disconnected. I'm very much born on the south side of Chicago. I remember when my uncle them told me. I remember when my grandma them told me. I remember what I seen. I remember what I seen my big cousin them experience. But there was a disconnect between, you know, all of our history, right? But as you get older and you learn and you understand that you are impacted by all of these things. But I find great pride in being a child of the resilient, right? When I think of like Black history, we had to become Black violently. We didn't sign up to be this thing that what we refer to now as Black, as this collective of all of us from different countries in Africa, now being composed of one body of people as Black. We didn't sign up for that. That was given to us. That's a violent history of us being turned into Black. So as us sitting here tonight, right, smiling and have an opportunity to see each other, even in this digital world, having a chance to go digital and talk to our brothers and sisters who are still in that particular space, that's the power of that, right? Of our magic and our beauty and our resilience. So Tupac, man.
Okay. All right.
Nobody could. Tupac had already said it.
I hear you. I mean, and so I mean, we ain't got to go through the Tupac and Biggie thing. I think they both were inspirational. But if I had to, you know, choose, I'm gonna ride with Pac too. But you know, I appreciate, I salute. I'm just because I think it's only right. Leslie, you know, for you, when you think about you know, inspirational figure throughout, you know, our Black excellence over history, for you.
Assata Shakur. Assata Shakur changed my life. You know, I love Assata. You know, I pray to meet her one day. For me, I love the autobiography of Malcolm X. And I believe that the autobiography of Assata Shakur is a parallel to that. And I don't think that it gets enough attention, recognition. And for me, it really, it showed Black women. It talked about Black women. It talked about our hardship. It reminded me of what Sojourner Truth said, ain't I a woman? You know, when you think about not just what she went through when she was at the hospitals and in the jails, what she went through in life, right? The brutality, the silent brutality that we face. I'm so thinking about my sisters at Shakopee prison that we forget about a lot of the time. When we talk about prison reform, we barely even talk about Black women. We ever barely even pour into Black girls and Black women. And that changed how I thought about my place in this world and what I was supposed to do. And I think it really reaffirmed my commitment to Black women and my Black self being a Black woman in America. I love Assata Shakur, and that book changed my life.
Absolutely. I appreciate your point you made too. You know, too often, you know, when we talk about reform, our black women are should be at the forefront of that and are an afterthought at times. And so that's on us to make sure we continue to elevate that. But that's also us who are in positions to make sure that when we talk about these things, that we're talking about them in an equitable way, and that means in that fashion. And also for our young Black women too. As well. So I would be remiss if I didn't. So Anika, you too as well. When you think about inspirational for you.
Right. I love everybody's inspiration. I have to bring it to, and I don't normally do this, but I just feel so compelled. I have to bring it to a spiritual place. And like, if I think about just really the conception, excuse me, of like Black excellence, brilliance, and resiliency, I honestly like am inspired by Jesus. Like Jesus definitely, let's be clear, Black man, like went through a real Black man experience. Like it's no, you can't recreate that and try to put a pale face on that experience that he went through. And when I think about just the revolutionary story of Jesus, of saying, you know, I am the Son of God, and being a child who was born in Nazareth, right? A place that said nothing good comes out of Nazareth, right? And we think about where we come from and how it has been identified as shithole countries, right? Excuse my French, but how we have also been placed to look like we've came from nothing, and we have always had to come from a spiritual place and be prophets, not only on our lives, but prophets in uprooting, the abundance of other people's lives as well too. And I just have to put that out there. I feel so compelled because, I know there's a lot out there, but I feel like when I think about our struggle, like it has to come from a spiritual place, and like Jesus' story, his life, the testimony, the walk that was walked, right? Like that is just to its essence. And just like Jesus, also that has been, cultured, vultured, and remaked, and narrative have been changed too. So we have to even activate and advocate for Jesus too. So shout out to Jesus.
No, I appreciate that. And being from Mississippi, and my mom being a Southern Baptist, she was if she get an opportunity to watch that, she'll be smiling at that. So and then she'll be asking me, have I been to church? When the last time I've been to church? Why ain't I been to church? So something else that came to mind, and I'll start, and this time I'll start with you, Kevin. How would you say that either your upbringing, your education, or even career choice has helped you in your development of your core identity? How has that played a role into your development around Mr. Reese, who Mr. Reese is today, when you think about across any of those particular spectrums?
Oh, it mean everything. Everything I am is, I'm a collection of everybody I know. I'm a collection of all the people that have impacted my life. I still remember the first thing my grandma told me. I'm still out here standing on that, right? So that absolutely impacts me. My career choice, this was spiritual, back to what Anika was talking about. It's who I am. It's who I am to my peers, my generation. I call it existing. I call it this thing, like having the opportunity to be a 34-year-old Black man free. My brothers in there with me know. What's today, Wednesday? I done stood up microwaves and had to cook and talk about. So I'm free, y'all, and I'm alive, right? So it's something, it's just existing. So existing right now in this moment, it's all of our duty to lock hands and do whatever you can do, because none of our liberation is like separate. If you free and you think you're gonna be free alone, then they're gonna just come and get you. So all of those things absolutely impacts where I'm at today, and it's still straight from where I'm from. My frame on collective liberation comes straight from my family, comes straight from my grandma. We was taught that if one go, we all go, right? I knew that. My sense of loyalty, my sense of people, my sense of mind, that meant that this was something that we lived and died for. So as I got older, I began to know more and more and more people who are my chosen family, who I've now known my whole life, who are friends. And my sentiments are the same. Like all of my efforts and energy would go towards making sure that there is a life for them to live.
Okay, I appreciate that. And I appreciate you just even being willing to share. I mean, even how you started that off and talking about just the influence, that your grandmother had on you, how you still standing on that. And for me, that's important, because when I think about, the generations that's coming behind us. And I think about us, as trying to fill that void of carrying on, for what John Lewis and the rest of them left for us. I think we too have to be reminded how that influence that stuck with you, that there's other youngsters out there, that the influence we gonna have on them is gonna stick with them. And so how do we continue to be mindful and think about that as we fill that space? Justin, for you, when you think about your upbringing and or education or career choice, how's that aiding in your development around your core identity?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, similar to Kevin, I didn't pick a career. This is a calling for me. I grew up in a situation where, so because it's Black History Month, it's good to talk about first, right? So the first time I met a police officer was when my father had a mental health breakdown and became violent with my family. And we called the police looking for help, but obviously they treated him as a threat, and he was in and out of institutions from then on. And we ended up homeless. So we moved to Minneapolis to live with my grandmother. First time I realized that Black folks had bad health care. It was when my great grandmother had a stroke, and then she couldn't have all these bad kids running around. So we had to get out the house. And so we ended up homeless, right? And then I think about the first time I was arrested and assaulted by police. And I think about, it's dealing with this crooked criminal justice system has been a lifelong struggle for me since I was 5 years old. And so for me, I decided to become a social worker because I wanted to serve families like mine. And so I worked in the community with youth and families in crisis, folks in education, all of that. And then the day that really was like, man, like I was like, I'm done. It was when the young people I was working with in youth programs started showing up in adult programs that I was working in. And I knew that kid might be a knucklehead, but that wasn't an accident. I was like, this wasn't their fault. They have been failed by so many systems to the point where they showed up at my men's shelter I was running. And so at that point, I was like, we got to start looking at the foundations and the structures, and we need to start shifting some stuff. And I became an organizer. None of that was my choice, right? It was all just based on the fact that I cannot ignore the oppression of my people and the systems that are built to do that. And frankly, if you look at every single system, healthcare, education, all of them fail Black folks across the board. And I'm just thankful for efforts like Representative Jim Clyburn, who put out a bill that said we should give GI funding to the Black families that were denied it years ago, where you can watch the white middle class be created off of policy and the Black middle class literally be neglected and a Black poverty class be created. And so that's why I do this work. I don't always enjoy it because there's some hard things we gotta see and there's some hard things we gotta deal with, and alliances are difficult and whatnot. But when I think about the folks sleeping in cells watching this right now, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's what I'm getting up for tomorrow, is to make sure that we try to reconstruct a justice system that is actually just, that is humane, that people can trust. Because I believe that that's what God put us here to do, is to treat each other right. So that's a little bit of my motivations on this. Sorry to get off.
No, I no, that's I no, that's what I'm here for. And I think it's important for our incarcerated women and men, because they're gonna see the authenticity. And for many of them, I mean, the same as similar. I feel that, and so Anika, same question to you. When you think about, your upbringing and or education, particularly being a Black woman, how has that influenced who you are today as with your core identity?
Well, first and foremost, I coined myself as a prayer from a prison cell. And a prayer from a prison cell because how I learned about the mass incarceration or the prison system or Minnesota's DOC was because my father, actually, before I was even born, literally said a prayer in a prison cell after he found out his firstborn had passed away from SIDS that he never was able to touch. My mom, used to bring my sister to the visitation room and he used to beg, to hold her. It's his firstborn, he wasn't there. And mind you, he was there for a probation violation, and for a year. And so growing up, my dad always told me that story of I prayed from you, literally from Stillwater's prison cell. And I have always wrestled, right, with the insanity of the need to have prisons in the manner that we have them in the United States. And as learning about the history and everything, like my sister Leslie E. Redmond was saying, it was very clear that it was slavery by another name, right? Once you know that history. And it was very clear if you just open up, and read the Constitution, the 13th Amendment, the caveat of the abolishment of slavery, except duly convicted of a crime, right? Next thing you know, we have the industrialization of a prison system and a criminal justice system to orchestrate that. So I knew that at a very early age. So I think really it was, the universe preparing me for such a time as this is what we're in, to addressing the injustice that has happened and really awakening the consciousness of everyone, right? Because we actually all are impacted by it. If we want to, talk about the prison system, we also have to talk about the economic force behind it, right? To create cheap labor and create, the products and the system of capitalism that we all, consume. We're the biggest consumers of it, also the biggest producers, but yet we don't, make the impact, or we don't generate the wealth, right? So I think really this is where my mind is always at. Not always, I find ways to have human experiences, right? And like enjoy myself. But when it comes to the case of, what this country has done for over 400 years and still is doing, there's definitely going to be a transformation, right? There's going to be a period on this, right? And we are all ushering into like really helping our white brothers and sisters get with the program with transforming how they have benefited and how they have interacted with, not only the poor, but Black and Brown communities in this country, right? And I think there's awakening that's happening that we all are very fortunate to be a part of, as a time like this. So like, again, like everybody else, it wasn't a career that I definitely wanted to go into. But majoring in criminal justice at Hamline University just gave me the tools and the knowledge to understand really the thought process behind why this system exists, and also having the backing, right, and having the community support and having the support systems and the love of our elders and those who tried, to fight the system before, like Angela Davis and so many more, to have new tools of liberation, new tools of how we address this issue. And I'll leave at this as well too, because I think it's really important. 2020 have definitely changed all of our lives, whether we want, for better or worse. But also to open up our minds, especially with our brothers and sisters who are incarcerated, that they still deserve to have a human experience, right? Just because you are behind walls, you have loved ones, you are a loved one to yourself. You do have life, you have breath in you, you have a mind, you can do art, you can do so many things to liberate yourself. So where liberation does not, actually liberation should start where you're at right now before you even get out, right? That is the real liberation, is the power of the mind, right? I think it's, was it Frederick Douglass? Oh Lord, I'm about to be misquoting. But like the mind is a terrible thing to waste, right?
Mhm.
And if we learn to free our minds first, all else the universe will play it out. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
No, I appreciate that. Absolutely. Um, So Leslie, as I look at the, at the clock and we kind of wind down, and feel free to touch on that too, as well. But also, if you can, if there's also anything else that you feel like you want to make sure is just shared when you think about Black History Month, um, for our incarcerated women, but not just for them, for what it means to you, but also talking about your experience or upbringing, how it's contributed, and then segue into, for you, anything that you feel like else that you want to leave the conversation with when we think about Black History Month.
Well, I love what Brother Kevin Reese says, until we are all free, right? And that's what I want you all to remember, is that I'm always thinking about you. I'm always fighting for you. I spend a substantial amount of my time trying to pour into innocent cases, and not just innocent brothers and sisters, but our brothers and sisters who have received severely over sentences, right? And helping to commute their sentences as well. And for me, my family and my ancestors are my foundation. That's very important. When I was sworn into the bar last February the 18th, that was what would have been my grandmother's 95th birthday, right? And the reason why I got sworn in even was because of Mayan Burrell and another brother who case that I'm working on right now. And like, I owe it all to them. right? I can't state that enough. I'm from the inner city of Washington, D.C. Grew up in a place where mass incarceration really hit us. You talk about the war on drugs. Nobody was really getting money and going to prison for the crack epidemic like Washington, D.C., because we know we have historically been a chocolate city. And that comes with a lot. It comes with a lot of blessings and it comes with a lot of consequences. And I grew up, unfortunately, seeing a lot of my older cousins and brothers and family members really torn away from our family with mass incarceration. And one of the things that I think is very important, because I think it was Justin Terrell who talked about neglect, right? For so long, I attributed, my interest into the legal field because of my cousin Kevin, who was always getting arrested. And in fourth grade, I asked my grandmother, Big Ma, who decides if Kevin goes to jail or not? And she said the judge. And I said, okay, well, I'm gonna become a judge because something's wrong with this system that keeps taking my favorite cousin away. But what I didn't realize was that I grew up looking at a picture of his mother, Aunt Renee, and she was in blue in the grass. She was on the yard, right? But as a kid, I didn't know that she was on the yard, right? And as I grew up, I was like, why we never talked about Aunt Renee going to prison? Because we talked about all the men in our family going to prison, and she was actually raped by an older Black male in our family, and she shot him, and that's why she ended up in prison, right? And so for me, not only fighting for our brothers, but fighting for our sisters who are not seen is so important. There's an increase in brutality on Black women from all angles, whether it's their lovers, whether it's the Minneapolis Police Department, the Hennepin County Sheriff's Office. And I am dedicated to uplifting those voices and, say her name like Breonna Taylor, and especially always our brothers as well, George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, Jamar Clark, Philando Castile, and the list goes on and on and on. So I say, I love you all. I love you all. I love you all. I love you all. I'm here. I'm here. And even if you don't see me, know that I'm praying for y'all and I'm fighting for y'all.
Absolutely. Let me just say, I appreciate each and every one of you. Even just what y'all to share tonight, Leslie, Anika, Justin, Kevin, I salute y'all because this requires a sense of vulnerability from y'all. I mean, and so to be willing to open up and allow yourself to be vulnerable in this space, I think speaks just to who y'all are, just as Black men and Black women. I think it speaks to the sincerity, the humanity, the empathy that you all embody, and so. From me to you, I just salute each and every one of you for just being willing to be a part of this, because I'm confident that it's something that you done said along the way that somebody who gonna hear this needed to hear that, and probably in ways none of us might not ever know. But before we go, but I kind of want to make this a little bit quicker. So if you can do it just in 30 seconds. Any last things that you want to leave with, specifically, when we think about Black History Month, and like I said, we'll have other opportunities where we can talk about, other things. But any last thoughts, and we'll kind of run through just kind of quick. Any last thoughts as you sit here and reflect and want to share? So, Kevin, I'll start with you. If you have anything,
sure.
Absolutely.
Yes, I would tell everyone as we start this Black History Month, if you want to make it impactful or count for you for something this year, start manifesting your magic. We all are Black history. We all have that magic. It's me. I'm sitting at home. I was just sitting there with y'all praying. I'm working every day. I'm praying every day. I'm with y'all. Go in your bag, sis, bro. Go in y'all bag. Can't nothing hold y'all until we are all free.
Absolutely. Anika.
I feel like I needed that from Kevin. Thank you. I needed the reminder. Just as simple as best. I guess I'll just end with you can contribute whatever you can. If you got loved ones, on the other side, call them, love them. Like, don't allow the stigma, don't allow the shame to label who you are, right? You have the opportunity to redefine who you are. You have the opportunity to reclaim who you are, that you are a human being, that you are loved, that you have an opportunity to change from within. Especially as somebody who, grew up and was raised from someone on the other side. There's people who's waiting for your phone call, who love you, who need that support as well.
Justin?
You know, I just want to encourage everybody. What you're dealing with is regardless of how you ended up in your circumstance, you know, this is not justice. And I just want to remind you that, you know, justice requires relationship, and our community needs to be in relationship with y'all to hold you accountable and to help you heal and to help us heal. And I'm just reminded of James Baldwin. I'll paraphrase James Baldwin, that you know, we, not I or you, but we are responsible for this world in which we live, if for no other reason than that we are the only sentient beings that can change it. And so in that, it's my commitment to you to take responsibility. And I already know many of y'all are doing that from where you at right now. And I just look forward to serving with you.
I had a feeling you was gonna go there, boy. You said, I appreciate that. Ms. Redmond, final closing words. Just your last thoughts before we wrap up.
Yes, I just want to tell our brothers and sisters that I love you, and that it's important for you to love you and for you all to love each other, because we are our brothers and sisters keepers, and we have enough enemies against us that we cannot afford to be each other's enemies. God bless.
Absolutely. Well, with that, again, I can't thank y'all enough just for your time. And again, I'm just gonna reiterate, I don't know if we'll ever know how profound the impact that I'm hopeful that not even just hearing y'all voices, but even just seeing y'all face for a number of our incarcerated, you know, women and men, just opportunity, how that might bless their day. But for each one of you, I see you, I hear you. I wish all of you and your families to continue to stay blessed, stay healthy. As Anika alluded to, we're still dealing with a pandemic out there that has disparately affected, you know, our communities. And so the good fight continues. But at the same time, I'm humbled to be, you know, in y'all presence and appreciative, while at the same time excited by the legacy that a number of our historical leaders have left. I mean, all of us are standing on the shoulders of giants. And so with that,
one thing, Brother Curtis, I want to salute you as well too for occupying that seat. That seat matters. You matter. Again, like it wasn't always that way. So I'm looking at Black history and living in Black history. So I want to salute you for. Absolutely. I was on this call with you tonight.
I salute you. Thank you, brother.
No, I appreciate y'all. Stay blessed, stay healthy. And with that, we'll close.
All right, again, peace and love.
Time.
Grace and peace, everyone.
Absolutely.
I'm Sarah Fitzgerald from DOC Communications.
And I'm Aaron Swanham.
And I'm Jeremy Herman.
And I'm Twee Tran.
Today, we want to thank everyone for sharing their stories, their expertise, their experiences, and their truths as we all come together as one to recognize Black history and celebrate Black excellence. To all of our colleagues and those in our population, happy
Black
History Month.
April 15th, 1947. It was like the spirits of the Negro Leagues carried number 42 onto that diamond. Through the hate, the bigotry, the pain, the barrier keeping Black players out of the major leagues was now forever broken. And the legend of Jackie Robinson was born. I mean, nobody in baseball will ever wear number 42 again because of that man and that moment. But I bet you already knew that story. Maybe you've seen the movies, read the books. So let me tell you a different story, one that's been overshadowed for far too long. Just imagine you're invisible. No one hears you. No one sees you, so no one remembers you. You're the best at what you do, but you don't get an audience, and nobody's giving you a stage. Think about how utterly helpless that would make you feel. That's what it was like for countless Black athletes whose names we'll never know. So what was the NFL's Jackie Robinson moment? How do we get to today, the Super Bowl, the biggest stage in sports? Well, in order for me to give you this complicated tale, I'm gonna have to take you back years. No, decades before Jackie. It's the Roaring 20s, and on September 26, 1920, the National Football League is born. With over 300 players in leather helmets, the league looked exactly like what you would imagine. But guess what? No color barrier. That's right, from day one, the NFL was integrated, if that's what you want to call it. 14 teams, 2 Black players. One of those men you may have even heard of, Hall of Famer Fritz Pollard. Fritz's athleticism was undeniable on both sides of the ball. He could run like an Olympian, tackle like a wrestler, and in a sport that struggles to this very day to put Black head coaches to work, Fritz did that too. But despite his success, progress was slow. There'd only been 13 Black players since the league was started, and things were about to get worse. In the midst of the Great Depression, league owners met secretly to discuss their growing league and the Negroes' place in it. They decided that these colored boys were bad for business. Call it what you want, but this gentleman's agreement made it clear as day. Blacks were not allowed to play in their league anymore, period. Just like that, one by one, those men were erased from the rosters, taking with them the brief history of the Black athlete and the National Football League. Now I bet you're wondering, how in the world do you go from a handful of Black players to 0 to the NFL we see today? Well, this part of the story takes us to Cleveland, Ohio. It's 1945 and the Cleveland Rams are champions of the NFL. Even though it was called the National Football League, it was more regional than national. You see, because all 10 teams played in the north and mostly eastern part of the country. So the new champs saw an opportunity to do something bold. They left Cleveland, taking their talents where no other team had gone before, west. The Rams planned to display their football prowess on Tinseltown's grandest stage, the LA Memorial Coliseum. But this iconic stadium was located right in the middle of one of LA's proudest Black communities, which meant it was funded by Black tax dollars. A fact that didn't go unnoticed by a group of prominent Black journalists, led by Haley Harding, who pushed back. Why should this all-white team from this all-white league get to play their games in our stadium? And you know what? The entire community agreed. In a meeting with the Rams, Haley Harding gave them the answer: Kenny Washington. Now, Kenny Kingfish Washington was the man in Southern California. No stranger to the lights, the cameras, and the action. Like any true LA kid, he knew his way around a film set as an actor, but the silver screen never captured his heart. Football did. As a homegrown product of UCLA, Kenny broke all kinds of records, even led the nation in scoring. So of course, his next step was the NFL, right? Wrong. Remember, it's 1945. Black players did not play in the National Football League. So, here we are yet again, faced with that same question. What is the NFL's Jackie Robinson moment? It's this moment, right here. March 21st, 1946. Kenny Washington signs with the Los Angeles Rams, breaking that 13-year unofficial color barrier in the NFL. This is what led us to Doug Williams. This is what got us to Tony Dungy and Ozzie Newsome. This is what gave us Marlon Briscoe, Jim Brown, Walter Payton, and all the Black players who defied the odds, inspiring those who make the National Football League look like the nation that it represents today. Long after that day in 1946, Kenny Washington remains in the shadows, not in the Hall of Fame, like his friend and college teammate, Jackie Robinson. But remember this, it was 198 days before Jackie that Kenny Washington stepped out of that tunnel, blazing the trail for a new era on the gridiron. And that was the moment. The black football player was invisible no more.
Hello, everyone. My name is Antonio Espinoza, and I'm from Stillwater Prison. And today we have another guest, a very special guest, which Ms. Cunningham is going to introduce.
Hi, I'm R.D. Cunningham, Lieutenant Cunningham from working at Faribault currently. And I am going to keep it very simple and get right to it and allow Mari Friesleben to introduce herself and tell us a little bit about her.
So it's so good to be invited and so good to be a part of the program that you guys are putting together. So I'm going to go back and say why I paid attention to your email in the first place, Antonio, and that's because when I visited Stillwater Prison in January of 2020, it was an indelible moment for me. It impacted me very deeply. I think I shared while I was there that it was my first time stepping foot in a prison, and I have had family members. I have had loved ones that have been incarcerated, and I have not been able to bring myself to visit them. There has just been something deep inside of me, and I know that in some ways it may have hurt some of them, that I couldn't go see them because I couldn't make myself go see them because I couldn't see them in that atmosphere. And I realize now that was very self-preservation on my part. And it was more about me than it was about them. But I used to always have all these thoughts in my mind, like I used to wonder about, like, how did they end up there? What could we have done maybe as a family? What could we have done as a people? What could we have done as a community, to keep them from being in that spot? And I think all those emotions would come crashing kind of down inside of me. And I would say, I just can't see them like that. And so, the first thing that I want to say to the audience that's listening to this, to the men, women, and even the children, okay, that are living life behind bars right now, just because somebody you love and somebody who loves you has not come to see you does not mean they don't love you. Okay. Just because they have not come to see you does not mean they don't love you. And I can attest to that. All right. So I got the invitation to come and visit Stillwater Prison in January of 2020. And the documentary, the Love Them First documentary, had been out for a while. It was receiving some significant accolades. It made me feel great, made the kids at Lucy Laney feel great. But I had gotten some invitations to come and go to different places, and most of them I had said no to because I have a school to run, right? I have a school to run. I have teachers to lead. I have children to mold and shape. And so, I passed on a lot of them, but there was something about the letter from Stillwater that made me kind of pause and think a little bit. And I didn't answer the letter right away, but I went to church that Sunday morning. And the one of our pastors is a native man here in Minneapolis, and he's just super real, cutthroat, he just gives it to you straight. He doesn't tiptoe around any of it. He's so raw. Sometimes I'm worried he's gonna start cussing in the pulpit, right? Because he's just like, And I remember that Sunday morning, and I wasn't thinking about the invitation to Stillwater. I wasn't thinking about it at all. But I remember that Sunday morning, he started quoting scripture. And one of the scriptures that he quoted was, I was naked and you clothed me. I was in prison and you visited me. And all of a sudden it was like, boom. And I thought about the invitation, and I thought about my inability to visit my own loved ones. And I said, and I knew in my spirit I had to go. And so I said, I responded to the email and I said I would go. And then I, I was, moving on with life. I'd filled out all the paperwork, and then the day came for me to visit. And I was in my car, and so I'm driving from North Minneapolis to Stillwater. So I'm on 94, right? And I'm just going, and I probably got right close to the border. And I felt like cold. And I felt like, can I do this? Can I really do this? I've never done this before. And I pulled up and I parked. And when I walked in, and I went from the public space, and I went into that area where the one door goes down and the other one comes up, and I walked fully into Stillwater Prison. The first thing that hit me, it smells different in there. It's like dead space. It's like the air can't circulate. And I just thought, Lord Jesus, Lord, help these men, God. And just let me show them not me, but you. And, when I walked into the room and they were getting ready to come in, and I stood at the door and I shook each one's hand and said, welcome. Those couple hours that we spent together, that was my opportunity to show them the unadulterated love that I believe my God has shown me, and let them see that through me and through my presence. I had an opportunity to, be in that room with former students, with relatives of current students, and it left an indelible impression on me. And so the least I can do is come back a year later for them and others and say hi.
Well, that was a very nice hi.
Yes.
Thank you very much for sharing that. That was very inspirational. I would like to ask you, like, which person now, historian or present, that inspired you to be the person that you are today?
So I would say first of all, and we were talking about this a little bit before we hit record. So I don't feel like I have a choice to be the person I am today. Okay. I have no choice but to do what God has called me to do.
Amen.
I have not always done what God told me to do, but I'm at a season in my life, and I believe everyone has the opportunity to make that choice, to say the past is the past. It's all about the present and the future at this point. So whatever I may have done before, I'm accountable for right now and what's moving forward. I can't change the past. I can change the present and impact the future. And so my faith grounds me and roots me very, very deeply. But I'm going to tell you exactly what has propelled me when it comes to people in the past, okay? Because I think it definitely ties into Black History Month. And I will say that if I had to bring it down and narrow it down to kind of one identity, it's the African that arrived in America. And the reason why I say that is because when I was a teacher, I was a middle school teacher. And when I taught history and when I taught the Middle Passage, I'm going to tell you exactly how I taught my students about the Middle Passage. So when I explained to them about the Middle Passage, and I explained to them that you had this continent of Africa, you had this continent of America. You had this space and place that was very rich, and you had another space and place that was very rich. But in the continent of America, the people who were here first were very generous, and they welcomed in people who were very greedy. And as those new people that came in were very greedy, they couldn't farm the land fast enough. And the natives who were already here before them knew the land too well to be put in bondage. And so they had to find people that they could put in bondage to farm the land and get them their greed. And so what they did is they found those people in the continent of Africa. They shackled them, they put chains on them, and they put them on a boat for what we call the Middle Passage. What we know now about the Middle Passage is that time between Africa and America, only 1 out of 3 Africans on that boat made it to America. So if you think about 1 out of 3, what happened to the other 2? 1 out of 3 did not make it because of health reasons. They got sick, they died. 1 out of 3 did not make it because they chose not to make it. They went overboard. They chose to be shark food rather than whatever this was that they were in the middle of. The third one made it. If one couldn't make it because of body, they were sick, diseased, and one couldn't make it because of mind, they couldn't deal with that bondage. They had to go over. The one that made it, that strong of body, that strong of mind, that's where I come from. That's where we come from. We're cut from that cloth. We have blood in our veins of people who are strong of body and strong of mind. If they could survive that, so that their bodies did not give up on them in sickness and disease, their minds did not give up on them to commit suicide and take their lives, if they could survive that, I can do this. So that 1 out of 3, that's my inspiration.
Wow.
Wow.
Thank you for that. That was very good, very visual. I saw everything you said. And to close, we would like to see if you have something, which I know you do, something inspiring to say to our incarcerated youth, the women and men in the state, that which you have done that already so much. Now, would you please, closing, give an inspiring word, encourage?
Absolutely. So I'm gonna use an example of a question that somebody asked me a few years ago. Okay. So a few years ago, I was being interviewed by a reporter, and they said to me, Mari, because they were following the work that I was doing in schools. Okay. So they said, Mari, are we to understand that your goal in creating a school atmosphere, a school environment, is that you want to create a warm and loving and safe place for your students because they don't have a warm and loving and safe place at home? So you want the school to be a warm and loving and safe place because they don't experience that in their home life. And I went, no. I said, I actually reject that. And I'm kind of a little bit offended by that because the majority of my students are Black, brown, and indigenous, right? So I felt kind of funny about that. Like, I was like, no. In fact, I don't like that someone would make that assumption about my students' home lives, because I think there can be dysfunctional home lives anywhere. I think you could go out to Woodbury and Wayzata and find dysfunctional home lives. And just because we may be in the hood, or just because we may be, people of color or kids of color, the fact that you would make an assumption that my kids' home lives is dysfunctional, unsafe, or cold is offensive to me. At the same time, have some of them come from a cold or unsafe home environment? Absolutely. But I choose to believe what I've seen, which is the majority of my students do not come from a place like that. And so it's my job and my responsibility to create a school environment for them that is warm, safe, and loving and kind, not because they don't have one at home, but because they don't have one when they leave home. See, when you're Black, brown, or indigenous in America, the second you're born, you are born into a cold and unloving environment. This country has made itself completely clear that we are not welcome here. It's just like when you talk to a young girl, and she tells you, this is what I tell people who aren't Black, brown, or indigenous so they understand, because they usually don't understand what I'm talking about. So you might talk to a young girl and she might say to you, mommy or daddy or auntie or uncle or grandma, grandpa, or even teacher, she might say to you, I don't feel like I'm pretty, right? And then you might say to her, like, what are you talking about? Who told you weren't pretty? Somebody told you weren't pretty? And she might say, well, I don't know. I just, when I look in the mirror, I don't feel like I'm pretty. Did somebody tell you weren't pretty? And she can say, no, I just feel it. And you know why she feels it? Because we tell little girls what's pretty from the time they're born. And so if they don't look like what America has told them is pretty, when they look in the mirror, they don't see what they believe is pretty. That's what happens with Black, brown, and indigenous children from the time they're born. They can't put their finger on it, just like that little girl. They can't put their finger on it, but they just know, I'm not who America says is worth it. I'm not who America says is valued. I'm not who America says is important, is smart, is brilliant. And so it's my job to create a school atmosphere and a school environment that tells you you are. So that it's not just mommy at home or daddy at home or grandma at home that's telling you, little girl, little boy, you are brilliant, you are smart, you are intelligent, you matter, you are worth it. I will fight for you, I will die for you. It's my responsibility to make sure that that is not only a home environment, but that is also a school environment, especially for my children of color. But what I will say to the men, women, and children that are incarcerated, you may have had a double whammy. You may have had a cold, unsafe, and unloving home environment and school environment, and for that I apologize. As a mother, as a teacher, and as a principal. If that was your experience, I apologize for that. And I hope that you can find it within your heart space to know that any of those messages that came to you, whether they were spoken or unspoken, that you did not matter, that you were not loved, that you were not worth it, that you were not worthy, or that you were not worth fighting for, that's a lie. You have to reject it. You have to not hold on to it. Don't let it come into your head. Don't let it hold space in your head. You kick it out immediately and you replace it with all of the good, kind, light-filled, and loving messages that say different.
Thank you so much.
Wow, certainly appreciate this. Yes.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
We want to thank you for your time and your encouraging words. You're an incredible person. I look up to you. I love your spirituality.
Yes.
You're a great leader. Thank you what you do for our school systems and in our community. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Say hi to my friends at Stillwater.
I shall do that. And with that, I want to say good night and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, you guys.
name is Dr. Artika Tyner. I'm a law professor and the founding director of the Center on Race, Leadership, and Social Justice. So when I think about my work and how it connects to the legacy and history of Black History Month, I think about my cultural roots. I know that sense that Marcus Garvey gives us, a connecting back to a history, to a land, to a culture. So Black History Month to me means power, resiliency, joy, and strength. So when I think about dating back to the 1920s, when Dr. Carter G. Woodson had a vision that started with Negro History Week of celebrating our heroes and our sheroes and telling our story as a source of inspiration for many and for generations to come. So fast forward where we sit today as we celebrate Black History Month, it's an opportunity to pause and reflect and grow in some meaningful ways. So the next question that we have today is, how did my upbringing and education experience help to strengthen my sense of my core identity? It laid the very foundation. As a proud daughter of Rondo, I know the importance of being rooted in your community and culture. I know the importance of taking a stand for justice. I know the importance of faith and a commitment to building a stronger future based upon our shared humanity and common destiny. So the lessons that I learned while living and growing up in Rondo really inspired me to become an attorney today. When I think about that vision, I oftentimes call it my vision of becoming Wonder Woman with a law degree and an afro. I wanted to be Miss Freedom Fighter Esquire, this idea, this superhero that would stand larger than life, to stand up for the cause of justice, to give voice to the voiceless and make an impact. The next question that you have for me is, which Black person in history has inspired me? There are too many to name, too many to number, but I'll tell you about a few. And actually, I'll use my children's book to give you a glimpse of some of the heroes and sheroes that inspired me. So let's take a look. I'll tell you about the first one. The first one is Ida B. Wells. We know Ida B. Wells is a journalist who wrote a remarkable book called Red Record, which documented the history of lynching in America. But we also know her as someone who was able to really write for justice in meaningful ways, to be impactful, to tell the stories of the African American community. And so when I think about that, let's just give you a glimpse of what my young character, her name is Justice, in my book Justice Makes a Difference, learns about Ida B. Wells. So Justice spent the rest of the afternoon reading about Ida B. Wells. Ida B. Wells was a journalist who used her writing to advance racial equality. She skillfully wielded her pen to wage war for justice through her work as editor of the Memphis Free Speech and Headlight. She continued to advance social change while serving as a journalist with Chicago's Daily Inter-Ocean and the Chicago Conservator, one of the oldest African-American newspapers in the United States. Justice was amazed by how Ida B. Wells used her pen to write for justice. So Justice picked up a pen and said, I can write for justice. So you get a glimpse of Justice holding her book about Ida B. Wells. Next up, I have to tell you about Paul Robeson. Paul Robeson has truly been an inspiration for my work. Not only was he trained also as an attorney, but he was a singer, he was an actor, and an entrepreneur, really a modern day Renaissance man. But unfortunately, not a lot of people even know his name. So let's get a glimpse of who Paul Robeson is. So Justice read all about Paul Robeson, who sang freedom songs in more than 20 different languages. He was a lawyer, a singer, an actor, and a professional athlete. And if you need to guess, he played football. Justice marveled at how talented Paul Robeson was. He was able to touch people's hearts through the power of song. These songs empowered others to join in the fight for freedom and justice. Justice had grown up hearing her grandma sing powerful songs like We Shall Overcome and Sam Cooke's A Change Is Gonna Come. These were freedom songs. When Grandma sang, Justice could feel it all the way down in her toes. Grandma, Justice said, I want to sing for justice. Will you teach me some songs? And Grandma began to sing, This Little Light of Mine, I'm gonna let it shine. And Justice felt a light inside her spark, and she said, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, she sang. So clearly you have two of my own superheroes for justice, Ida B. Wells and also Paul Robeson. And I can't leave without giving you one more. This is a glimpse into the life of the attorney who inspired me to become a civil rights attorney, and not only just become a civil rights attorney, but to also become a law professor. So here we are. Justice is learning something new in school. And here's a glimpse into the story. And it said, this week we learned about the legal case of Brown versus Board of Education. Justice told her grandma. Grandma got a faraway look in her eyes. I remember attending school in a one-room shack in Alabama, she told Justice. Dozens of students of all ages gathered in the schoolhouse to learn together. We didn't have much. Most days, not even paper or pencils. But we had a love of learning. Justice couldn't imagine going to school in a one-room schoolhouse with kids of all different ages. Justice told Grandma that she learned that Brown versus Board of Education was a case about ending segregation in schools. Grandma, we learned that Black children were not allowed to attend schools with white children. Yes, Justice, I remember, Grandma said. The schools were separate and unequal. Grandma, we also learned about the lawyer who worked to end segregation in schools. So this is the part that you've been waiting for. You'll get a chance to learn more about Charles Hamilton Houston. Justice was proud to know such important information. Indeed, Grandma smiled. Charles Hamilton Houston, he said lawyers should serve as a mouthpiece for the weak and a sentinel guarding against wrong. That's a funny word, Justice said. What does it mean to be a mouthpiece, she asked. Grandma explained, a mouthpiece means that you use your voice to share about the challenges people face in society, like ending hunger or ending homelessness. What does sentinel mean? How about you find out for yourself in your dictionary, Grandma said with a wink. Justice ran to find her dictionary. She paged through until she found sentinel. A sentinel is a soldier or guard whose job is to stand and keep watch. Wow, Justice thought, I can be a soldier for justice. So here's a picture that you'll see of Charles Hamilton Houston. So when I talk about this, I couldn't narrow it down to just one person in history or today who inspires me. Like I outline in my book, Justice Makes a Difference, there are dozens of people who inspired me, who share my cultural legacy and background. And as I look ahead to the future, I think it's also about you and I inspiring the next generation, to give them something to look forward to say that they too can make a difference, no matter how young they are, and also no matter where they start, that the question is really where they finish. So I guess the last words that I will leave you with related to Black History Month, let this be an opportunity to learn, to grow, and to study in some meaningful ways. Learn about those heroes and sheroes that can inspire you on your leadership journey. Take a moment to learn more about your cultural history. So one of the research papers that I'm currently working on is connecting the 2019 Year of Return to the ideas around Afrofuturism. And so you may be saying, Dr. Tyner, what does that exactly mean? What is the connection? We saw it in Black Panthers, that sense of Wakanda, that place, that tranquil place, that place of peace, the place of innovation, the place of vibrant community connections. How do we create them today? Not just in a world for a superhero, but an everyday world for you and I. So when I think about Afrofuturism, it's the idea of asking three core questions. The first one is I am. So connecting back to your cultural heritage, but that's informed by I was. Understanding what that heritage teaches us, those stories of resilience, of power and strength. I've been quite fortunate. I've had the opportunity to travel back to the continent at least a dozen times now. So I have a sense of the road and the path that our ancestors had walked upon, a sense of their resiliency, even as I went to the last bath, and that was the place where our enslaved ancestors were taken before they were brought into the slave castles in Ghana. That they were not only brutally beaten, but in that last bath, they were cleaned with the rigid edges of bamboo. So it was cutting their skin and just all the terrible pain that you could see in that place. But you see at the bottom of the Amazon River, you see a glimpse of gold. You see glittering gold, of those glimpses of hope that our ancestors kept near and dear to their heart. So for me, I was is a story of power, is a story of resiliency. And then the last piece that I will ask you about is so I am, I was, and I will be. So the power of what you and I can create together, create those memories of being able to work together in unity, to create that strength and power from learning more about our cultural history and finding it as a place to be able to find inspiration for us day by day and moment by moment. So in those instances when I think about maybe life is getting too hard, that the sea is so wide and my boat is so small, meaning that I'm overwhelmed, I can look to the strength of Yaa Asantewaa, who is a great warrior, that she was able to take a stand against the British to protect the Golden Stool and the Ashanti Kingdom. She said, if the men won't go, then we, the women, will fight this battle. So I look at Yaa Asantewaa. when I need direction and a path to be able to say, how do I continue to take a stand for justice? Maybe I look to inspiration from Queen Nanny of the Moors and look at the challenges that she faced, but she still kept pressing forward. And if I need that type of strength and courage to simply say that I can be all that I dreamed to be, I can look in the mirror because I can see a reflection of my ancestors going on this journey of life with me. So I just wish you great blessings as we embark on this journey of exploring and learning during Black History Month. And this is not just for African Americans alone, this is for all of us, because the late Dr. Maya Angelou tells us, when we think about the premise of diversity and inclusion, that America has evolved into this rich tapestry. So here's our opportunity. She said no thread is greater than the other, to weave together a narrative of our cultural histories, our backgrounds, to come together united as one, to make a difference and to stand strong together. So with that, I thank you, and I hope that you have a wonderful Black History Month.
I'd like to introduce Mr. McKenzie.
Hello all, my name is Walter McKenzie. I'm here at the Stillwater facility, and I was asked what Black history means to me. And now that when I thought about that, I came up with the conclusion that Black history means a better future for society, and that Black history is a painstaking process of consistency, determination, struggle, and overcoming obstacles. It also equates to a better, uninterrupted future for the Black community, society, and humanity as a whole. Therefore, Black history is essentially not only a better future for the Black community, Black history means a better future for humanity.
What do you envision for the Black community?
Peace, amalgamation, economic power, less strife.
Do you have kids?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
What do you envision for your children?
Oh man! Not only do I envision for my daughter a better quality of life, but I also envision for my two grandchildren a better quality of life than their mother lived. Something better for them in the future, so they don't have to compete with biasnesses, whether conscious or unconscious, any type of discrimination, that they practice being non-discriminatory as well. They rely on approaching people with with respect to the golden rule, and just be an asset to not only the Black community, but just humanity in general, just the whole world. Because when you look at the situation with George Floyd, that one situation was a catalyst to just for everybody to research their humaneness and their humanity and how we treat each other. Just all across the board. So it's not necessarily based on, it's not a race-based thing. When I think about Black history, I look at what Black history has contributed to society then, now, and in the future. And it's that we just need to have a little bit more humaneness, just be a little bit more aware of who we are, be proud of who we are, and just accept other people for who they are. Yeah, Black history means, that's what a better future is with respect to Black history. Because I think once Black history is recognized as something that can heal, it will you know, that'll make communities all over the world be, you know, with respect to housing, economics, education, just a better, it'll make it a better future for everybody.
Thank you, Mr.
Yeah,
McKenzie.
thank you.
Hello, my name is Antonio Espinoza, and I work at Stillwater Prison. I am a 19-year veteran and work as a public servant here at Stillwater Prison. The question that was asked of me today was, what does Black history mean to me? Well, for me, Black history in America has been full of light and darkness. There has been some progress, and there's still work to be done. Today, we are all in need of healing in our nation and in our communities. As a Black Latino, I grew up in the South Bronx, New York City, watching civil rights leader Dr. Martin Luther King fight for justice and equality for all Black communities and for all of our humanity, just to be murdered. I grew up watching the women's liberation movement, a diverse social movement that in 1960s and the 70s sought equal rights for opportunity for greater personal freedom for women. I grew up watching former Senator John Lewis marching with Dr. King, and now I see Black Lives Matter in the streets of St. Paul and Minneapolis. And we are all still fighting for the same thing, equality. We are in need of healing and restoration for this community and this country. We need to work together for the better of humanity. We need to knock down the walls of hatred and build a bridge of unity so that we all could live in harmony. And to close, yes, we have greatness in our Black culture and in our communities. We have those who have paved the way for all of us. We have the innovators, artists, leaders, scientists, and even astronauts whose shoulders we stand on. But wait, let me bring this back down to earth. Let's keep this 100%. There is greatness in you, the youth of today, the men and women who are incarcerated, who need the opportunity for transformation. The teachers, the employees, the frontline workers that come to work every day. Yes, that means you. We all need to do better for each other and for our communities that we live in and work at. In order to see change, you have to be that change. As a leader that we all are, we need to rise up and be that change that we want to see. We need to be uncomfortable to do the uncomfortable as leaders and members of our community and co-workers. We have to end this era and step into our greatness. That's what I feel about Black History Month today. My name is Antonio Espinoza. I work at Stillwater Prison, and God bless you all.
Holy God, maker and sustainer of the world, we call on you to grant life and blessing to all who hear this. Holy God, I ask that you grant us peace when there is no peace. I ask for unity at a time when there is no unity. At a time when violence runs rampant in our communities, I pray that you will resolve the differences which create disorder and add to our grief. Breathe on me, breath of God. Fill me with life anew, that I may love what thou dost love and do what thou wouldst do. When we lose our breath to the circumstances of life, I ask that you breathe life into those who need help. To the God who formed us from the dust of the ground and breathed life into our bodies, I pray that you will revive us to life everlasting. I ask you not because of who we are or because of what we have done. Rather, I ask because of who you are. Change our sorrow and our tears into laughter and joy. You who sent your Son to provide for our salvation, your Son who turned water into wine, who sets the captive free, we ask that you join together our hearts that have been ripped apart by the uncaring acts of a fallen world. Father, when we lose a sense of dignity, when we feel a loss of worth, when we feel empty of the images and ideas that make life valuable, forgive us for not turning to you, the author and finisher of our faith. Grant us from your peace and your presence in times like this. Grant us the comfort you promise. Our prayer is that in the face of fear, we will rely on God rather than artificial pacifiers. Help us to put into practice the truth expressed by Dr. King when he said, I have decided to stick with love. Hate is too great a burden to bear. We call on you to help us to realize we are not as strong as we think we are. Help us to look to you in prayer when hurtful words or hurtful deeds dig into our skin and leave us wounded. Help us to move through the rage that comes when unfaithful people injure, insult, disrespect, or offend us. To those seeking power through false idols and ideals, be present with those people. Help them to see the truth. Transform the abusers of power so they become the helpers of our society. To the ones who ignore trouble, open their eyes and open their ears. To the ones who fail to feel the pain of this life, give them sensitivity to the daily struggles with which so many people live. We are reminded of Dr. King's words that what endures is not the hurtful words of our enemies, but the silence of those who call us friend. We are wounded by abandonment, Father. Be present with us so that we feel the comfort of your Spirit. To the victims of hatred, let each one know that you are a great love, you have a great love, and that you're concerned for your creation. Grant us the patience we need to live with the unlovely. And to those who present themselves as unlovely, I ask that you demonstrate to them that the ache or alienation they feel can be replaced with the dignity of your company. Too often the weight of hurt and pain can't be overcome by our efforts. Replace that feeling of loss with the fullness of life that only you can provide. We pray to you, God, through the mercy and love of your Son, with the support of your Spirit, that the residue of injustice, the scars of life hurts, the guilt that rots our feeling of trust be taken from us and that we will be healed. We seek reconciliation in a world that has been torn apart by a lack of love for our neighbors. For all of the violence and hatred expressed to us, we pray for healing and forgiveness. For all of the violence and hatred expressed by us, we pray for healing and forgiveness. You alone, Heavenly Father, are able to provide for our protection and relief. Father God, you alone are the source of life, for the very breath that we breathe for each of us. We live in a fractured and broken society because of the impact of sin, for the part we have played in making that situation or preventing healing from that situation. Please forgive us. For the brokenness we feel, I ask that you would bind up our wounds. As your word tells us, there is a balm in Gilead that brings healing. Father, we pray for you as your Son did in the garden. My prayer is not that you take them out of the world, but that you protect them from the evil one. In the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen.
All right, that brings our program for day one to a close. First, we want to thank you for your time and attention. We understand just how important it is. Also, a big thank you to the entire Black History Month Planning Committee who pulled together all the details to make this possible. So until next time, make it a great day.